Tonight you are in Rome, not the Rome of marble and midday sun, not the white temples, the crowded forum, the shouting of the markets. That Rome belongs to the day, and the day is very nearly over. Tonight you are here for the other Rome, the one that only begins when the sun goes down. Look west, over the rooftops. The light is draining from the tiled roofs and the high brick walls, sliding down them like water, and as it goes, something happens that you may never once have stopped to imagine. There is no lamp on any street corner of this city, not one. A city of 1,000,000 souls, the greatest city the world has ever built. And when the sun sets, it has no light of its own. Only the moon, if the moon is willing. And so you might expect the streets to empty, to fall quiet, to sleep. They will not. When the last glow leaves the hills, the streets of Rome do not empty. They fill. So before we step down into them, dim the lights around you, or turn them off altogether and let your room grow as dark as the city we're about to enter. Settle back, let your shoulders drop, and your body grow heavy, and your breath grow slow. And if wandering through forgotten nights like this one is something you would like more of, if this is the kind of quiet you have been looking for, you might very quietly subscribe, only if it truly helps your nights. There is no hurry here. There is never any hurry here. And before we set out, tell me where you are listening from tonight and what hour it is, where you are. Leave it below in a word or two. I read every one before my own lamp burns out. Now, let your eyes fall closed, or half closed, the way they want to. The sun is gone, and somewhere out across the darkening city, a horn sounds low and long from the walls. The day is ended. The first watch of the night has begun. We are going to walk this night from one end to the other, through all 4 watches of the Roman night, from this last violet dusk, down through the deep and dangerous middle hours, all the way to the first gray breath of dawn. And by the end, you will know something almost no one remembers. How 1,000,000 people, with no light but fire, once lived through the dark. Come, step down into the street. The Romans had a name for this hour. They called it prima fax, first torch, the hour the lamps are lit. All along the street, in the doorways of the little shops, the taverns, you can hear it beginning. The rattle and scrape of wooden shutters being drawn across, one after another, down the block. The baker, the wine seller, the man who sells lamp oil by the ladle. The working day is closing its eyes, and in the gathering blue, one by one, the small flames appear. Watch how they are lit. In a doorway across the street, a woman bends over a little clay lamp. A lucerna, cheap fired earth, no bigger than the palm of your hand. She touches a taper to the wick, and a single small flame stands up, no larger than a tear. That one flame is the whole of her light. She will carry it from room to room. She will not waste it, for that lamp burns olive oil, and olive oil is not cheap. In a poor household, light is something you measure, something you ration. Now look up the hill to the great house on the corner, the domus of a wealthy family. Through the half-open door, the light spills out warm and golden and careless. Tall bronze lampstands, lamps hung on chains from the ceiling, many nozzled, each nozzle its own flame. In there, the night is held back by a wall of fire, a wall that costs every single evening more than that woman with her single clay lamp will spend on light in a season. That is the first thing to understand about a Roman night. Darkness was free, light was money, burning. And the 2 Romes, the Rome that could buy back the night and the Rome that could not, are about to walk these same streets and have 2 entirely different nights. And that clay lamp with its little mouthful of oil, that was not even the bottom of it. Below the lucerna came humbler light still, a tallow candle made of rendered animal fat that guttered and stank and wept grease down its own side as it burned. And below even that, for the truly poor, the rushlight, a single stem of dried rush, its skin peeled half away, soaked in whatever kitchen fat could be spared, and set to burn at an angle in a pinch of iron. It gave a thin, wavering, smoky little flame that lasted a few minutes. And then another rush was lit, and another. That was the light most of Rome actually went to bed by. Not the warm gold of the poets, a stub of fat burning down. Because here's the thing about that oil. It was not only light, it was food. The same olive oil that fed the small flame in the lamp was the oil you cooked with, dressed your bread with, rubbed into your skin at the baths, and poured out to your gods. To fill a lamp and set fire to it was to burn something you could have eaten. And so, on an ordinary night in an ordinary house, you did not light the dark simply because it was dark. You lit it when you had to find the bed, to quiet a child, to say the last prayer. And then you pinched it out and let the free darkness back in and saved the flame for tomorrow. So sit for a moment inside one of these small lit rooms before we move on. Look at what the single flame actually does. It throws a trembling circle of gold over the table, the bowl, the backs of two hands, and past that circle, nothing. The walls are only guessed at. The ceiling is a low, soot-black sky. The corners keep their secrets. This is how a Roman saw the inside of his own home at night. Not the whole room at once, the way you do, at the touch of a switch, but a small, warm island of seeing, afloat in a house full of dark. Your eyes tonight will have to learn to live in that circle. The rest you must imagine. So did they. Above you, the sky has gone from violet to a deep, deep blue, and the first stars are out. And this is worth pausing on, because the Romans lived closer to the sky than we ever will. They had no fixed clocks, no ticking minute that is always the same length. Instead, they cut the daylight into 12 hours and the night into 12 more, and let those hours stretch and shrink with the seasons. On a long winter night like this one, each hour of darkness runs well past 60 of our minutes. The night is not only dark, it is long. Longer than any night you have known. There is a great deal of it ahead of us, and no reason at all to rush. And while there is no reason to rush, there is a great deal to listen to. For a Roman knew his night far more by ear than by eye. Ease the shutter open a crack and let it in. The endless trickle and splash of the public fountains that never sleep, running day and night from the aqueducts. A dog, and then every dog. A baby crying, somewhere up in the dark tiers of the tenement. Two neighbors quarreling through a wall, thin as a promise. The watch going by, calling the hour. And beneath all of it, that low, ceaseless, grinding undertone that never quite stops in this city. The carts, which we are about to meet properly. You cannot see a single bit of it. You do not need to. In a city without light, the ears keep watch long after the eyes have given up. To keep order in all that darkness, Rome did what its armies had always done. It broke the night into 4 watches, the Vigilia, 4 equal turns of the dark, measured out by a water clock, drip by patient drip, so that no sentry ever had to stand more than a single watch alone. First watch, second watch, third, fourth, and then the dawn. 4 gates of the night, and we are going to pass through every one of them. And they gave the parts of the night their own soft names too. Names worn smooth by centuries of use, the way we say dusk or the small hours, without ever thinking about it. This hour now, with the lamps just lit, they called prima fax, the first torch. A little later, when the city lies down, comes concubia nox, the time of first sleep. Deeper still, at the very pit of the dark, intempsta nox, the hour, they said, that belongs to no one at all. And then, far ahead of us yet, Gallicinium, the cock crow, and Diluculum, the daybreak. You do not have to remember any of them. Just let them wash over you, like the stations of a long night train, each one a little further from the light you left behind and a little nearer the light still to come. The first watch is the sociable one. The city is dark now, but it is not yet asleep. Far from it. Smell the air as we walk, wood smoke and lamp oil, and somewhere the sharp, fat smell of sausage cooking. Hear the doors that are not being shut, the ones being propped open, spilling light and noise into the street. The shops are closed, but the night houses are opening. Let's look inside one. Here on the corner, a low doorway breathes warmth and yellow light into the cold street. This is a papana, a Roman tavern. Step just inside the door with me. The air is thick, smoke, spilled wine, bodies, the steam off a pot of something stewing on the counter. Men crowd the benches, porters and boatmen and off-duty soldiers, freedmen, slaves sent on errands who have found a reason to linger. There is a clatter and a rattle from the corner, and a low groan, then a laugh. Dice. Rome loved to gamble and the law disapproved, and no one in this room cares in the slightest. A cup of rough wine, cut with warm water. A game. An hour out of the dark. For a few small coins, a poor man can buy back a little of the night in here, and many of them do. Lean on the counter a moment. See the round clay pots sunk into the stone top, keeping their contents warm. A thick stew of peas or beans, chickpeas, boiled eggs, olives, a hard sheep's cheese, coarse dark bread, and if the place is doing well, a little hot sausage spitting in a pan. This is not a feast, it is fuel. Cheap, salty, filling. The food of men who have no kitchen of their own, because that rented room 4 floors up has no hearth and no chimney and no space to cook. For a great many Romans, the tavern was the kitchen. It was where the night was warm, and there is the wine. Always the wine, but never, if you are respectable, drunk the way you might think. A Roman cut his wine with water, 2 parts water to 1 of wine, often more. To drink it neat was the mark of a barbarian or a man bent on his own ruin. The cheap draft was pasca, a thin sour splash of vinegar, wine, and water, the stuff the soldiers drank on the march. The fine stuff, up in the great house, was mulsum, wine stirred with honey and served warm. But here it is rough and it is watered, and it is enough. It takes the edge off the cold and off the day, and off the long dark walk still to come. And in the corner, that clatter again. Dice. The Romans were mad for it, top to bottom, emperor to porter. 2 kinds are rattling across these tables tonight. The tesserae, 6-sided like ours, and the tali, little knuckle bones from the ankles of sheep, 4-sided, each face worth a different score. The luckiest throw of all, called the Venus. Money changes hands with every cast, which is exactly why it is against the law. Except during the midwinter days of Saturnalia, when the whole world turns briefly upside down and anyone may gamble in the open. The rest of the year they simply do it anyway, here in the lamplight, one ear half-cocked for the tread of the watch. No one is listening for it tonight. Let them play. Out in the street again, the tavern is not the only warm door. Here and there a thermopolium still glows, a hot food counter, its round clay jars of stew and spiced wine kept warm over a little fire, feeding the ones with no kitchen and no patience left. The great public baths, the thermae, have long since banked their furnaces and turned everyone out into the dusk. For a Roman bathed in the afternoon, and the baths were a daylight world of gossip and business and steam. But a wealthy house keeps its own small bath suite, and there late, a rich man may still be sweating out his dinner by lamplight while the city turns dangerous beyond his wall. Warmth, like light, was a thing you bought. The night sorted everyone, gently and completely into those who had it and those who did not. And if you truly want to know the Roman night, you must at least glance down toward the Subura, the great, cramped, roaring quarter packed into the valley below the fine houses, where the poor lived, stacked upon the poor, and the noise and the smell and the sheer life of it never quite stopped. It was dangerous, it was filthy, and it was gloriously, stubbornly alive. The satirists sneered at it, the rich held their noses at it, and a great share of the million people whose city this was went to sleep there tonight, cheek by jowl in the dark, listening to precisely the same carts and dogs and quarrels you're listening to now. Because whatever else it was, the Sabra was home. Up the hill, behind the walls of the great house, the night is being spent very differently. The dinner, the cena, that began in the last of the daylight is still going. The guests recline on their couches, three to a couch, leaning on the left elbow the way you must. The courses come and go. A slave refills the cups. Somewhere a voice is reading, or a girl is playing. This is the good end of a Roman night, and it can run on for hours deep into the dark, warm and lamplit and slow. Let us stay in that warm room a little longer, because you may not see its like again. The dinner has come in 3 acts. First, the gustatio, the tasting, eggs, olives, salt fish, raw greens, a cup of that honeyed mulsum to open the stomach. Then the mensa prima, the first table, the true dinner, roast meats, birds, fish borne in on platters, sauced and spiced past anything you would quite recognize. For a Roman cook prized the surprise of a flavor far above the plainness of it. And then the mensa secunda, the second table, fruit and nuts and honey cakes, the slow, sweet close of the evening. And all the while, between the courses, something drifts through the lamplight. A lyre, a reader, a dancing girl, a poet trying out his newest lines on a table that may or may not be listening. And when the eating at last is done, the drinking begins in earnest. The commissatio, the after dinner. A master of the drinking is chosen, the cups go round by his rule, and the talk loosens and rises and turns by turns clever and cruel and sentimental, the way late talk does in every century there has ever been. Notice, if you can, who lies where. The couches and the places upon them are ranked as finely as thrones, the place of honor here, the host there, and woe to the guest set below his proper station, who will feel the sting of it for a week. Even at its warmest, even half asleep in the dark, Rome never quite stops reminding you exactly where you stand, or rather, where you recline. And then at last, it is time for the guest to go home. And here, watch. The 2 Romes step back into the same street, and you see the whole city in a single glance. Out of the great house comes a rich man, and he does not step into the dark. The dark steps back from him. Ahead of him and behind, a long line of slaves. A comets train so long, the poet Juvenal grumbled, that it fills the whole street. Torches, a tall bronze lamp carried before him. He himself is lifted off the filthy stones entirely, carried in a litter, a lectica, swaying on the shoulders of 8 men, the curtains drawn, a little warm box of privilege gliding through the night. For him, Rome after dark is safe and soft and lit. He has bought the night the same way he bought the lamps in his hall. He is not the only one moving through the dark, though. The first watch is the hour of every appetite the daylight keeps folded quietly away. Behind a low door marked by a single red lamp, a lupanar does its sad, sordid trade, its little cells no larger than a grave, a lamp burning low in each. Down another lane, an all-night cook shop feeds the sleepless and the shameless alike. A gambler slips home lighter than he came. Somewhere 2 people keep a meeting the households would never allow by daylight. The Roman night had an underside, and everyone knew that it was there, and most of them looked the other way, the way cities always have and always will, once the respectable have gone to bed. And behind him, unnoticed, a poorer man sets off home the other way, alone. Listen to how Juvenal describes himself on that walk. I, he says, whom the moon is used to guiding, or the thin light of a candle, whose wick I carefully husband and tend. The moon, if there is a moon, or one small candle flame, cupped against the wind, its wick trimmed low to make it last. The same ration light we watch that woman carry. One man rides home behind a river of fire. The other feels his way through the black by the moon in a guttering stub of wax. Keep your eye on that second man, the one alone with his little flame, because the first watch is ending now. The taverns are burning low. The dinner parties are breaking up. The sociable part of the night is folding itself away. And the streets he has to cross are about to become something else entirely. Stay close. The second watch is beginning, and Rome is about to show you why its poets could not sleep. Listen. Under the quiet, under the closing doors and the last drunken song from the tavern, there is a sound rising, a deep, grinding, rolling thunder coming up through the soles of your feet from the stones of the street. It gets louder, iron-rimmed wheels on paving, the bellow of oxen, a driver swearing, another answering, and the crack of it echoing off the high walls of the tenements on either side. The carts have come into the city. Here is a thing the daytime never told you. By day, the streets of Rome were closed to wheeled traffic. No carts, no wagons, not inside the walls. By an old law they traced back to Caesar himself. A city that crowded simply could not move if the delivery wagons rolled by day. And so all of it, the grain, the stone, the timber, the wine, everything a million mouths and hands would need tomorrow, all of it had to come in now, at night, in the dark, right past the windows where everyone is trying to sleep. Think of everything a city of 1 million people must swallow in a single day. The grain above all, ship after ship of it, come up the river from Egypt and Africa, then hauled from the wharves into the city on the backs of groaning carts. Wine in its great clay jars. Oil, timber and brick and marble for the building that never stops. Vegetables from the market gardens, live animals for the butchers and the altars. Fish, salt, cloth, iron. None of it may move by daylight. So all of it moves now, in the dark, through streets so narrow that 2 loaded carts can barely squeeze past one another, which is why they are forever jamming, wheel locked to wheel, while the drivers stand in the blackness and scream themselves hoarse. The poet Martial, who could not sleep for any of it, once recited the noises of this city like a man listing his own symptoms. The schoolmasters at dawn, the bakers in the night, the coppersmiths hammering the whole day through. There was nowhere in Rome, he said, that a poor man could simply go to be quiet, and they could not sleep. This is the strange, exhausted secret of the Roman night. The city that had no light was also, for much of the night, far too loud to rest. Listen to Juvenal again, and remember he is a satirist, a complainer. He is turning the volume up for effect. But listen to how the complaint runs. To sleep in this city, he says, costs a fortune. That is the root of the sickness. The carts crashing through the narrow, twisting streets, the curses of the drovers jammed to a halt. They would rob a sea cow of its sleep. And then more darkly, here, most of the sick die simply for want of sleep. Think about what that means. In Rome, real sleep, quiet, unbroken, behind thick walls set well back from the street, was a luxury. Something the rich man in his deep house up the hill could buy, along with his lamps and his litter, and something the poor family in the tenement, 4 floors up, with the wagons grinding past their shutters till the small hours, simply could not. Rest itself had a price, and most people could not pay it. But not everyone in the dark is trying to sleep. Some are awake on purpose, because someone has to watch the fire. Come to the corner and let them pass. A patrol moving at a steady walk, torches in hand. These are the vigils, the watchmen, the wakeful ones. The Emperor Augustus had raised them generations ago now, after fire had eaten through the city. 7 cohorts of them, thousands of men, freedmen mostly. Each cohort assigned its own districts of the city to guard through the night. They carry buckets of leather and hooks and long poles and pumps for water. And they walk the dark streets until dawn, their heads tilted up, watching the black rooftops for the one thing every single soul in this city fears more than any thief. Fire. Look up at the buildings around you. The insulae, the great islands of apartments, rising 4, 5, 6 floors into the dark, built fast and built cheap, timber and mud brick, packed wall to wall against the next one and the next for street after street after street. Now imagine a single overturned lamp on the 3rd floor, one knocked cooking fire, one candle left too near a curtain. There are no gaps between these buildings for the fire to stop. There is no water up there to fight it. There is only the narrow stair and the dark and the flames coming up it. Everyone sleeping in these rooms tonight knows how they might die. It is why the watchmen carry their torches through the dark. And it is why, when a bell begins to ring somewhere out in the night, no one in Rome rolls over and goes back to sleep. They lie in the dark, and they listen, and they smell the air, and they wait to hear whether tonight is the night the fire's coming for them. So it is worth knowing exactly who these men are, as their torches move away from us up the street. The vigils, Rome's watch and Rome's fire brigade, one and the same body. There are 7 cohorts of them, some 7,000 men in all, and very nearly every one of them a freedman, a former slave, earning the full rights of a citizen the hardest way there is, one night at a time. The city is carved into 14 regions. Each cohort holds 2 of them, working out of fortified stations and little watch posts tucked in among the tenements, so that wherever a fire wakes in the night, there are men within a few streets of it, already awake, already waiting for exactly this. And see what they carry when the alarm truly comes. Buckets of leather and rope, passed hand to hand along a human chain from the nearest fountain. Long poles and iron hooks for dragging burning beams down and away before the flames can leap. Axes, thick mats and blankets soaked in water and in vinegar to beat the fire flat or to shield a man walking into it. And a thing they were rather proud of, the Sipho, a great twin-piston water pump mounted on a cart that could throw a jet of water higher than a man could reach. It was the finest firefighting the ancient world would ever build. And on a bad night in these streets, it was still nowhere near enough. Because there had been bad nights, the worst of them all was still spoken of in careful, lowered voices. A July night, some years back now, when a fire caught in the shops crowded around the great race course and did not stop. It ran before the wind through those canyons of timber and brick for 6 days and 7 nights. And when at last they thought it beaten, it broke out afresh and burned for 3 days more. When it was finally over, of the 14 regions of Rome, only 4 still stood untouched. 3 had been scoured from the earth completely. All the rest lay cracked and roofless and smoking. Picture what that is. In a city with no lights and no way down, but the same narrow stairs the fire itself is already climbing. People woke in the pitch dark to the smell of smoke and the roar of it, and could not tell which way to run. Whole families were cut off on the upper floors. The old and the small and the slow simply did not come down. And afterward, when the ash had cooled, the people needed someone to blame. And the story they told, whether it was true or not, was that while their city burned, the emperor had stood on a high tower and sung to himself about the fall of an older, more famous city in an age long gone. Whether Nero truly sang that night, no one can say now, but that the people so easily believed he might have, that alone tells you something about the fear this city lay down inside, every single night, behind its barred and lightless shutters. And yet Rome did what Rome always did. It buried its dead, and it built again, though this time a little wiser. The streets that rose out of the ash were laid wider, so that the next fire might not leap across them quite so easily. The height of the towering blocks was capped. Sun-dried mud brick gave way, wherever the money allowed, to fired brick and honest stone. Long covered colonnades were thrown up along the fronts of the new buildings, and every household was ordered to keep firefighting gear close to hand. It was, in its grim way, the birth of the building code, written, as such things so often are, in the smoke of a disaster that ought never to have been allowed to happen at all. None of it, of course, made the night any brighter. It only made it a little less likely to kill you all at once. And where did the watchman's water come from? In a city set beside a river, most people would not dare to drink. From the hills, from far out in the green country, carried in along the long stone arches of the aqueducts, sloping so gently downhill that the water seemed almost to walk into the city of its own accord. It fed the great baths and the corner fountains that ran all night long, and the houses of the wealthy, and whatever spilled and overflowed went washing down through the drains and out again to the river. On a quiet night, when the shouting had finally stopped, you could hear it very nearly everywhere. That cool, endless background trickle, the sound of Rome quietly drinking. It was one of the true wonders of the world, and most nights not a single soul remarked upon it because it simply never stopped. Tonight the bells stay silent, the patrol moves on, their torchlight sliding away down the street, and the great dark buildings settle back into uneasy quiet. The second watch is deepening, the carts are thinning out, the last tavern has finally closed its door, and now Rome grows truly still, which, in this city at this hour, is not a comfort at all, because the third watch is the dangerous one. The Romans had a name even for this, the deep middle of the night, the lowest point of the dark. They called it in tempesta nox. It is hard to translate. The timeless night, the dead hour, the part of the night that is no proper time for anything at all. No time to be working, no time to be traveling, no time for any honest soul to be out under the sky. The hour that does not belong to the living, and you are out in it. So walk carefully, and keep your eyes not only on the street ahead, but up on the windows, because in Rome, at this hour, death came from above. Look up at those tenement walls climbing away into the black on either side of you, floor over floor of shuttered windows. Any one of them might open. Juvenal, grimly, half laughing, wholly serious, lists the ways. A roof tile, worked loose, sliding off the highest roof to shatter on the stones, or on a skull. A pot, cracked and leaking, tipped out of a high window in the dark, and worse than pots. There was no drain up there in those crowded upper rooms. What filled the chamber pot through the long night had, in the end, to go somewhere. And often enough, it went straight out the window into the dark, onto whatever or whoever was passing below. You smile, perhaps. They did not. Walk the way a Roman learned to walk after dark, shoulders a little hunched, kept in close to the buildings where the jutting upper floors give some cover overhead. But not too close, for a doorway is exactly where a hand can reach out of the black. Listen, over the sound of your own feet, for the scrape of a shutter easing open somewhere above you, and keep to the middle of the street where you can, to the pale path the moon lays down for you along the stones. This is not quite fear. It is simply how a person moves when the city stacked over his head is 10,000 small dark rooms, and any one of them might, without a word of warning, empty itself upon him. You would be a careless man, the poet says, to go out to dinner without first making your will. He is joking, and he is not joking. Count the open windows you pass under, he says, and you have counted the number of ways you might not make it home. It sounds like a comedian's exaggeration, until you learn that Roman law had a name for it too. There was a specific action a man could bring in the daylight courts against a household that had poured or thrown something down onto him in the street. Diaphusis et diectus, concerning things poured out and thrown down. You do not write a law to cover a thing that never happens. The danger from the windows was real enough that the lawyers had gone to the trouble of naming it. And the windows were only the danger from above. Down here at street level, in the dark, there were the others. Your house is shut behind you now. And a shut house, Juvenal warns, is an invitation. While you are out, a burglar may already be at your shuttered shop. And on the road itself, the man with the blade who will settle the whole matter quickly with cold iron and be gone. And worst of all, perhaps because there is no reasoning with him, the drunk. The young tough who has drunk himself mean and cannot sleep until he has picked a fight with someone. Who is genuinely miserable, Juvenal says, on the rare night he finds no one at all to beat. He stops the lone traveler in the dark. Where are you coming from? Whose wine is in you? Who told you that you could walk here? And whatever you answer, and whether you answer at all, the ending is the same. And here's the hardest part. If it happens to you, if a hand closes on your arm in that dark street, no one is coming. Remember the watchmen, the vigils with their buckets and their torches? Their eyes are on the rooftops. Their war is with the fire. They are not a police force. They were never meant to save one man in a dark street from another. Rome, for all its million people, all its law, all its glory, had no one whose job was to walk you safely home. The only real protection against the Roman night was the one the rich man had already shown us. A wall of your own torchbearers, your own strong slaves, your own bought light. Everyone else simply had to cross the dark and hope. So a Roman did what people have always done, where no one is coming to protect them. He protected himself, and he trusted nobody. He barred his door from within with a heavy beam of wood. He kept a dog, or failing that, the painted picture of one, snarling on the threshold beneath 2 words of warning. Cave canem, beware the dog. He hid away what little he had worth taking, and if he had money enough, he never set foot in the dark at all without his own men close around him. Even the law half shrugged at the whole business. It allowed you, in so many words, to kill a thief who came upon you in the night, where by daylight you might not, for the plain reason that in the dark you could neither see to defend yourself any gentler way, nor call for a help that was never going to come. The night in Rome was very nearly a lawless country of its own, laid down fresh each evening over the lawful city like a second darker map. Juvenal, who gives us so much of this dark walk, saves his blackest joke of all for the poor man's place in it. The rich man, robbed, has his slaves and the law and the long leisure to be furious. But the poor man, beaten, stripped, left sitting in the road with a few teeth gone, must then go and beg that very same law for the right merely to be heard and count himself fortunate if he is. There is a bitter equality to the Roman night, and it runs the opposite way from the one you might hope for. The dark itself does not care in the slightest what you are worth, but the moment the sun climbs back over the hills, the daylight world comes flooding in again, with every one of its rankings intact. And even your bruises, it turns out, are worth a little less if you are poor. So the poor man with his candle keeps close to the walls. He does not walk down the middle. He listens to every doorway, and the whole city, packed into its dark islands of brick, lies behind its shutters and its bolts, and if it can, sleeps, and if it cannot, lies awake and waits for the sky to turn. And spare a thought before we leave this hour for the ones with no shutter to lie behind it all. In the shelter of a colonnade, under the arch of a bridge, against the still warm outer wall of a bathhouse, the truly destitute of Rome are bedding down on the bare stone. Beggars, the crippled, the old slaves turned out to die, the ones the city has used up and set aside. For them, there is no barred door standing between themselves and the night. There is only the night all the way down. And the strange, hard mercy of it is this: the cold and the dark they lie exposed to are the very same cold and dark that the emperor himself, behind all his walls and all his guards, is at this very hour also hiding from. The night is the one thing in all of Rome handed out to everyone alike. It is only that some have so very much more to set against it. The third watch holds. The city holds its breath. And in the black rooms above you, in the deepest hour of the night, the sleeping and the sleepless are not as alone as they think they are. Because the Romans believed the dark was crowded, and in the next hour, the dead go walking. Come away from the street now, up a dark stair, feel your way, there is no light, and into one of these small rooms where a family is sleeping. This is where most of Rome spends the night. Not in painted halls, but in a room like this. A low bed, a lectus, a mattress stuffed with straw or wool if they are lucky. A tiny sleeping cell, the cubiculum, barely bigger than the bed itself. Bodies close together for warmth, the shutters barred, the last lamp long since pinched out. They are asleep. But listen to how they fell asleep. Because the Roman lying here in the dark did not believe, the way you might, that the night was simply empty. The Roman believed the dark was full of the dead, not the honored dead, not the ancestors who were kind and remembered and fed. These were the others, the lemurs, the larvae, the restless ones, the dead who had not been properly buried or who had died badly, or who simply would not stay where they were put, and who came drifting back through the sleeping house in the dead middle of the night, in exactly this hour, looking for the warmth of the living. Every shadow in the corner of the cubiculum might be one of them. Every creak of the timbers overhead. Now the Romans did not fear all their dead. Far from it. Most of the dead were family still. The demands, the kindly departed, the parents and grandparents who had gone on ahead and who watched gently over those they had left behind. Twice a year, the living went out to the tombs along the roads beyond the walls and ate a meal beside them, poured wine into the earth for them, left them bread and salt and violets, and came home comforted. Those dead were loved. Those dead were safe. It was the others who walked tonight, the ones with no family left to feed them, or no proper grave, or a death so bad it simply would not lie still. The murdered, the drowned, the ones tipped into a pit unmourned. Unremembered and unfed, they turned hungry. And a hungry ghost does not keep to the tombs with the good dead. It comes looking in the deep of the night for a house with a little warmth still left in it. And so, on the nights when the dead pressed closest, the Romans had a way to send them off again. And it is one of the strangest and most human things you will ever hear. In the deepest part of the night, the father of the house would rise from his bed. In silence, barefoot, he would walk through the dark rooms. He would wash his hands clean in water, and then he would fill his mouth with black beans and move through the house, casting them back over his shoulder, one after another, without ever once looking behind him. 9 times. And with each one, the same words under his breath. With these beans I redeem me and mine. These I throw. With these I buy back myself and my household. 9 times over. And the hungry dead, the belief went, would gather the beans out of the dark behind him, and take them instead of him, and be satisfied, and go. Then he would take up bronze, a pot, a basin, and clash it and say 9 times more. Ghosts of my fathers, depart, and it was finished, and he could return to his bed and sleep. Picture him for a moment, a grown man in the black middle of the night, walking his own house barefoot, throwing beans over his shoulder to feed the dead so that his children might sleep untroubled. That is not foolishness. That is love, wearing the only armor the dark had ever given him. They told a story about where that strange rite had come from. In the very first days of Rome, they said, before the city was even properly built, Romulus had killed his own brother Remus, and the murdered brother's ghost came back, restless and reproachful, to trouble the living until the rite of the beans was worked to lay him quiet at last. Whether any of that was ever true hardly matters. The fear underneath it plainly was. And the beans were no accident either. To a Roman, there was something of the grave about a bean, pale and shaped a little like a thing that had never quite been born. The priests of certain gods were forbidden so much as to speak the word. To throw them was to throw the dead a handful of their own shadowy world, and buy the living a little more time in this one. This was the festival they called the Lemuria, and for the 3 nights of it, in May, the temples of Rome stood shut, and no one would have dreamt of holding a wedding. They were unlucky days. The dead were simply too close, and there was gentler company in the house as well. By the hearth, or in a small painted shrine set into the wall, lived the Lares and the Penates, the little guardian gods of the household itself, the spirits of the family, and the store cupboard, and the threshold. They were given a few grains, a drop of wine, a quiet word, and a Roman lying down to sleep might turn a prayer toward them the way you might rise to check that a door's locked. One small steadying act against the great size of the night. For every Roman house, however poor, was also a small temple. Somewhere on the wall, a painted niche in a fine home, a rough little shelf in a plain one, stood the lararium, the shrine of the household gods, the dancing Lares with their raised cups, the penates who guarded the store of food, and the genius, the living spirit of the head of the house himself. These were not the distant gods of the great marble temples. They were household gods of this doorway, this hearth, this one family and no other. Each day they were given their due, a few grains of salted meal, the first taste of a dish, a garland on a feast day, a murmured word of thanks. And near them, in the old way, a fire was kept, for the hearth itself was holy, its flame a small daughter of the great fire the Vestal virgins tended at the very heart of the city. And to let it gutter out untended in the night was to let something more than warmth go out of the house. So even in the sleeping home, something stays awake. A low red glow on the hearthstone, the small gods in their niche, a family watched over in the dark. For the night was a doorway, and the Romans knew it. What came through that doorway once you were asleep was dreams, and dreams to them were not nothing. Dreams were messages, warnings, signs read backward out of the dark. There were men who wrote entire books on how to untangle them, what each image might mean, and people carried their dreams to these interpreters the way we might carry a strange pain to a doctor. To fall asleep was to set out somewhere, and you did not always come home rested. Sometimes in the worst reach of the night, the sleeper would feel it, a weight settling onto the chest, pressing down, pinning the arms, stealing the breath, a shape in the dark room crouched on top of you while you lay unable to move or wake or cry out. The Romans had a name for that visitor too. We still use a version of it even now, but that is a fear for another, deeper night than this one, and dreams were their own vast country, mapped and argued over and studied with enormous care. Not every dream was a message. The Romans knew that too. Some were only the day's leavings, or a heavy supper, or the first heat of a fever. But some, the true ones, came through a gate of horn and showed you honestly what was coming, while the false ones slipped in through a gate of ivory to lead you astray. There were men who made an entire living reading them, sorting the true from the false, and people carried their dreams to these interpreters the way you might carry a strange new pain to a physician. Generals waited upon a dream before a battle. Emperors woke from one and turned the course of the world. And crowding in around the dreams came all the softer terrors of the Roman dark, the Strix, the night thing, half screech owl and half witch, that was whispered to fly in at an open window and feed upon sleeping children, the ever-watchful evil eye, and the whole quiet armory of charms and amulets a mother would knot about a small child's neck to turn it away. To close your eyes in this city was not, as it is for you, merely to stop seeing. It was to cross over into somewhere, and a careful Roman did not cross without a prayer, for the night was also the hour of magic, of the things done in the dark that no one would own to by daylight. Somewhere in this sleeping city at this very hour, a hand is pressing a thin sheet of lead into the earth of a fresh grave, or dropping it down a well. A curse tablet, scratched with the name of an enemy, a rival charioteer, a faithless lover, and a plea to the powers below to bind them, and twist them, and strike them dumb. The dead, being nearer those powers, were thought to carry the message down. And there were whispered figures who worked the true dark arts, the witch gathering her herbs by moonlight among the tombs, calling up things that were far better left lying still. Most of it was fear and rumor, and the plain human wish for a little power over a life that offered so terribly little of it. But on a night like this, behind your own barred door, you did not laugh. You lay very still. You were glad of the small gods in the wall, and you waited for the cock. And some tonight are not sleeping at all, but watching. On a flat roof somewhere, a man tips his head back to the same stars you watch come out at dusk and reads them. The Romans were half in love with the notion that the night sky held their fortunes written out in advance, if only a person knew the script. And the astrologers, the Chaldei, did a roaring trade in swearing that they did. Even emperors kept them close and feared them, and now and then drove the whole tribe out of the city. For a man who claims to know the hour of your death is a dangerous man to have about. Tip your own head back with them a moment. The same cold, patient stars that wheeled over Rome that night are wheeling over you now, very nearly unchanged. Whatever you decide they mean, there is an odd comfort in that. Some things, at least, the dark has never once taken away, and some are simply working, for there were always those in Rome who stole their best hours from the night. The scholar, the scribe, the poet, the anxious man of affairs, bent over a page in a small ring of lamplight while the whole household slept around them. They even had a word for it: lucubratio, the labor done by lamplight, the burning of oil and eyesight together in the dark. It was how a poor clever man got ahead, and how a rich, restless one wore himself away. Picture that one lit window, high in a black wall, the last one awake on the entire street, a single mind still turning, quietly while the city dreams. There is something in it you might even recognize. The night has always belonged, a little, to the ones who cannot quite bring themselves to put the day down. So let the family sleep. Let the beans lie where they fell, in the dark corners. The house is quiet now. The dead are fed. The small gods are watching. And the breathing in the cubiculum has gone slow and deep and even. The night has reached its very floor. And from here, though not one soul sleeping in this dark city can feel it yet, the only way left to travel is up, back toward the light. Listen, far off, across the rooftops, something is about to break the dark. There, a single sound, thin and bright, thrown up from some hidden yard among the tenements, and answered a moment later from another, and then another, rooftop to rooftop across the whole sleeping city, a cock crowing. The Romans loved this hour so well that they named it for that very sound, Gallicinium, cock crow. The beginning of the fourth and final watch of the night. It is still fully dark. The dawn is not here yet, but the cock has promised it. And in a city with no clocks and no lamps in its streets, that thin cry out of the blackness was the most hopeful sound there was. The first hard proof that the night was going to end, exactly the way it always had. There is a reason nearly every people who has ever lived inside the dark has loved that one sound above all the others. The cock crows before there is any light at all to see by. It answers something the eye cannot yet confirm. It is faith in the plain brown shape of a bird. To a Roman lying awake in the small hours, nursing a sick child, or a debt, or a grief, or only the ordinary sleeplessness of the poor, that first far cry was the whole long night turning over at last on its hinge. The dark had a bottom to it after all. You had reached it, and you had lived. And now slowly, gently, the long climb back up toward the morning could begin. And there is one more light to wait for before the sun. Low in the east, brighter than any star has a right to be, a single point of white fire is climbing. The morning star, the last to fade, the one the Romans called Lucifer, the light bringer, the herald of the dawn. It is not truly a star at all, though no one walking home tonight has any way of knowing that. It is a neighboring world, catching a sun that has not yet cleared our own horizon. But to the tired and the sleepless, and the ones who have simply made it through, it has always meant the same plain thing. Hold on. The night is very nearly spent. The light is already on its way. And with the cock, the first of the living begin to stir, long before their masters, long before the sun. Down at street level, a red glow wakes behind an iron grate, and a low grinding begins beneath it. The bakers, the pastores, already at their mills, turning the great stones, grinding out the grain for the bread the whole city will eat in a few hours without ever once wondering who rose in the dark to make it. The poet Martial, counting over everything that had murdered his sleep in the city, set them right there among the noises of the small hours. The millers at work in the night. But to you tonight, walking home worn out to the bone, that grinding is no nuisance at all. It is a comfort. It means the world is starting itself again. Go and stand a moment in that red doorway. The heat reaches you first, and then the good warm smell of it. But look past both to the work itself, because it is brutal. A great cone of stone sits turning inside a hollow one, and between them the grain is crushed to flour, and turning that upper stone, hour upon hour, round and round in the dark, is either a blindfolded donkey plodding its endless circle, or a man. For to be sent to the mill was among the very things a Roman slave dreaded most in all the world. The pistrinum was where the worst used of them were broken, chained to the turning stone, in the heat and the flour choked black, until it finished them. That soft, warm loaf that will reach a rich man's table at dawn, and that he will break without a single thought. It began here, in the night, in a place very close to a punishment. Rome ran on hands like these. It simply preferred not to have to see them. Up on the walls, the last watch is changing. Tired men come down out of the dark. Fresh men climb up into it for the shortest and coldest turn of the whole night. The one, alone of the four, that gets to end in daylight. The great darkness is loosening its hold now, street by street. It is not over, but it is ending. Stay with it just a little longer. The most beautiful part of any night is the part where it finally gives way. After the cock, strangely, a hush. The Romans noticed this too and gave it a name, Conticinium, the falling silent. That odd, suspended pause before the dawn, when the crowing has stopped and the day has not yet started, and the whole exhausted city seems to draw one last quiet breath in the dark. It is the strangest and gentlest moment of the whole night, this one. The dangerous hours are behind us now. The ghosts have been fed and sent home. The fires did not come, and the day has not yet laid its thousand small demands back down upon anyone's shoulders. For this one held breath, the whole vast city belongs to no one at all. Not to the rich man, not to the watchman, not to the dead, and simply rests in the gray between two worlds. If you are ever going to let go tonight and drift off, it might as well be now. Here, in the softest hollow of the dark, with the whole of the night safely behind you, and the sun not yet asking anything of you at all. And then, look east, the thing you have been walking toward all night long. The sky above the far rooftops is no longer black. It has gone the deep gray of cooling ash, and then a paler gray, and now, low along the hills, a thin line of something warmer. The Romans called this first light Diluculum, the daybreak, and the morning that came after it, Main, the return of the sun. The stars are going out one by one, and the shapes of the buildings, that all night long were only blacker patches of the dark, are quietly becoming things again. A doorway, a balcony, a cracked pot on a windowsill, a cat on a wall sitting very still, watching you go by. And the great machine of the day begins, slowly, to turn itself over. Up at the wealthy houses, the doors open early. And here they come. The clients, ordinary men in their best togas, gathering in the gray half-light at a patron's door to wish him a good morning, to be seen, to ask some small favor, to be handed a coin or a meal. The Romans called it the salutatio, the morning greeting, and it began at first light, which means these men too rose in the dark and crossed the cold streets to stand here at dawn. The whole vast web of the city, patron and client, great house and tenement, begins to hum again with the coming of the light. Watch them gather, these clients, in the cold blue light at the great man's door. Some of them men of decent birth themselves, fallen on hard times, swallowing their pride down along with the morning chill. When the doors open, they will file inside, be greeted by name if they are fortunate and by a board steward if they are not, and receive the sportula, the little dole, a handful of coins, or a basket of food, the price of a day's loyalty. Then out again, to trail behind their patron through the length of his morning, to applaud his speeches and swell his crowd and be seen faithfully at his elbow until they are let go to come and do the whole thing over tomorrow. It is a kind of work and a wearying one, and it too begins right here, in the dark before the dawn. Even the man who has nothing left to sell but the fact of his own presence must be up and dressed and standing at another man's door before the sun. The shutters you heard drawn closed at dusk are going up now, all down the street, one after another. The very same sound, run backward. The wine cellar, the baker with the first warm bread of the night's long work. A water cellar calls the first call of the morning, and the forum that stood empty and blue an hour ago is filling again with the footsteps of the day. Breathe it in with me, this returning world, before we let it go. The smell of new bread, everywhere now, drifting up from 100 ovens. Water cellars with their dripping jars calling the first call of the day. A barber setting out his stool. Somewhere already a schoolmaster's droning voice and the miserable chant of children who would rather be anywhere else on earth. That very sound the poet cursed at the top of his whole list of the noises of Rome. Shutters and voices and footsteps, and the long, low groan of the first lawful cart of the morning. The city is breathing in again, filling its lungs with light. And you have seen the thing that almost no one who ever lived here quite got to see because they were far too busy living inside it. A whole Roman night, from the last torch to the first bird, entire. One more thing, before we let the day have you back. As the gray turns slowly to gold, the great doors of the temples are being unbarred, and the first priests move through the cold air to tend the morning fires and to read the will of the gods in the flight of the waking birds. Down at the river, the fishing boats are coming in. In the markets, the stalls are being dressed. Greens still wet with dew, bread still warm, the good clean smell of a city that has, once again, come through. Rome is opening like some great slow flower, petal by petal, exactly as it has every single morning for 700 years, and will for centuries yet to come. And not one of them, not the priest, not the fishwife, not the yawning clerk, will give a moment's thought to the enormous dark thing they have all just passed safely through. The night. They were simply far too used to it. You are not, and that is why you are the one still awake and watching at the very end. And the 4 watches of the Roman night are done. First torch and the sociable dark, the grinding carts and the sleepless windows, the dead hour and the danger, and the beans thrown over a shoulder to the ghosts, the cock and the mills, and the coming of the gray. You walk through every one of them, a whole Roman night from end to end, from the last light of one day to the first light of the next. And you are still here, which in this city, after this night, is not a small thing at all. The sun is coming up over Rome now, warm and ordinary and gold, spilling down over the tiled roofs the very same way the light drained out of them all those long hours ago when we began. The night is over. The city that ruled the world has survived the dark once more, the only ways it ever knew how, with fire and law and wakeful men upon the walls and a handful of black beans thrown over a shoulder to keep the restless dead content until morning. But you do not have to rise with it. The dawn belongs to them. This last quiet belongs to you. So let the Roman morning go on without you. Let the streets fill, far away and soft and golden. Stay here in the warm dark with your eyes closed and your breath slow and your whole body easy and still. Sleep well. We'll wander another night soon.